Okay, a little value add Cura slicer. And just general production tips just to smooth things out. So Control A, select all. It's also available from the settings up here. And just press delete. So we're going to start from scratch. So I have pulled the Cura thick. When you're going into these different INI files, which you get with the 3D Labs, when you're switching between them, it'll ask you whether you want to keep or discard the existing settings. And what that really means is that when I'm switching between different profiles, do you want to keep my explicit settings, things like my flow, retraction, etc., etc. And they're mentioned here. You can see the brim and so forth. So yeah, I do want to keep those. So I want to simulate, because I've just swapped back to the old, or one of the old ones. I'm going to load the Cura thick, but I do want to keep my existing settings, but I do want to merge in the things that are different for this Cura thick, which is the wall count has gone up to 3. The wall thickness has gone from, I think, 1.2 has gone up by 0.2. Layer height's the same. Top and bottom layers have changed, and I can see I've got 2 bottom thicknesses and 2 top thicknesses. Sorry, 2 millimeters of bottom thickness, and so 2 millimeters is 8 layers because it's 0.25 times 8. So some of these you can see, if you change them, it'll automatically calculate how many layers dependent on how thick you want something to be. Again, zigzag I think is included in that. Pretty much everything's remained the same though. The print head temperature, the bed temperature, the flow rate, all the retraction distance rather, has remained, as has the primer mount, as has the print speed. Brim, I think the brim was being added in 2 millimeters, and the only one I can see popped up again was remove the empty first layers. Everything else seems okay though, and I'm going to stick with that for now. Now, once you've got those set, so I can see I've got my brim switched on, I haven't got a raft enabled, and I haven't got any infill. Sometimes it's good to sort of have a quick look at these, and I can see the current profile that I'm using, and also I can see the layer thickness and the extruder, the helpers, the shell, the infill, and the different colors that it's going to use, and whether I want to see travels or not. Well, I don't in this case. And then you can choose the layer view from up here. X-ray view is quite interesting, so you might want to switch that on. And then what I'm going to do is simply drag and drop the elements, the STL files, directly, but I'm going to get a selection of them. So I'm going to go for I'm going to hold the shift key down, go for the 3 motor mounts. I'm going to hold the, let's have a think. I want the battery holder as well, so I'm going to hold the control key down. Oh, let's try that again. Shift key, then select all 4, or control key to unhighlight, and control key again and move the mouse away. So you can go and grab a bunch of STLs just using shift and control. Shift for a group, control for individual to select or deselect. Then drag and drop those directly into the onto the bed effectively, and then go and slice them. Just wait for those to process. You can also see the object list, currently what's in the object list. Don't worry about the name, that's just the tag it gives. You can rename this, and when you save the file it will also change the name. So if I now just roll around a little bit and then go back from X-ray to layer view, I can now start to go through the layers, and I can see this is definitely using 3 walls. So if I look, I can see 3 in here, or 3 lines for the wall. So these are thicker because it's a battery holder. so I want it to be fairly springy but strong. And same for the motor mounts, I do want them to be strong, and that's why we're using the thick profile, so that we're using a 3-wall count, and the top and bottom layers being beefed up effectively, because these are stronger parts. Obviously this motor mount has got to be pretty strong for the vibration coming off the motor and the like. So that's automatically dragged and dropped those. But what if I wanted to kind of optimize it a little bit? What I could do is just drag this object over here and then move the motor mounts so a little bit nearer to each other, so they're all, then the head will travel between these three, printing away as it does. If you have them reasonably close, and there's less far for the head to travel, and then bring this bottom one in line somewhere around here. And I could, if I want to rotate that around, I could choose the rotate option, and let's see if I can grab it, rotate it around, there you go, and drop that. Again, you've also used the right mouse wheel to tilt up and tilt down, so if you wanted to pitch it, or laterally roll it, or roll it around, you could use the move option. Various other options like mirror, per model settings, support, blocker, scale. You can scale these up and scale these down. All I can say to you is it's possible to do that, but with model planes, they're designed specifically with aerodynamics in mind. So if you're thinking of scaling wing sections or fuselage and the whole of the model, then that will impact the flight characteristics. And also, of course, the engine mounts, you wouldn't want to scale those particularly, because they'll only fit a certain type of engine, motor mount, and that will have to be static. So be careful about scaling, but yes, you can sort of mess around with scaling. And then you've got different views down here, face view, top view, side view, right side view. You can switch these views as well if you want, but personally I like to typically have a 3D view. Usually have it in, again, I can move, use the mouse wheel to zoom in, use the shift key to move up, down, right or left, and then use the right click and drag up or drag down, drag up rather, to rotate around, so I can have a good look at these, including flipping upside down to see what the bed is like, and whether it's sticking or not, and whether I need a brim or not. So these parts probably don't need a brim, to be honest, because they're pretty big. That's the only one that might need a brim, so it's quite likely I can probably turn the brim off. So these are the things you learn. But with a thin wall printing, because you might be printing tall, thin objects, you're quite likely to need a skirt or a brim of some type to stop it being knocked off by the head. If the head happens on the z-axis to catch the top as it gets taller, it will impact it. Also, by having a brim or a skirt that's close to the object, you get better stiction, and that also avoids warping, where you might get something lifting, especially on the thin wall where it lifts in the corner on one edge. So that's something to consider. So let's preview that, so we'll look at it. Yeah, there is a brim on here. I'm happy to live with that though, it's only 3. And the other thing about a brim or a skirt is that it's bleeding the head. It's pre-extruding and cleaning out the head effectively prior to the main printing starting. So by having a skirt either further away or closer, or having a brim, not only you get a little bit better adhesion to the bed, especially for the tall objects, but also it flushing out the head in readiness for doing the core of the printing. Because you may have switched filament, for example, but not completely bled out, the filament. Anyway, that's it. And again, thanks for listening.